Good afternoon, Steemit. How are you? Article 61, bringing tales from the crypt. UK's Independent Inquiry into Child Sex Abuse, or the sham that is the IICSA's Independent Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse. Because if you've been following my work, you will see that they have been doing a shit shower of a job. Oh yes, but as to be expected, because it is the mafia putting themselves on trial. Slightly entertaining to watch if it wasn't such a morbid subject. Yeah, I'm doing my best to bring you the facts while this is going on. Yesterday's hearing, the hearing on the 31st about the child abuse going on in the Nottinghamshire care homes. Believe it or not, that article that I posted yesterday, that was half a day. That's all that hearing was, half a day's hearing, which is a bit shit on the victims for giving them that little amount of time, but was still an amazing amount of data to get through, and I had to butcher that article down to a ribbon. I apologise for the state of that article in the end. It was a shadow of what I first wrote out, but I had to butcher it to fit it in because it wouldn't accept it. So that being said, I've decided to do this in video form so we don't miss any evidence out. Hopefully I didn't yesterday, so that was good. But I'm going to do this in video because it's easier to get all the evidence down, and then it's still there, and I can highlight the points I want to highlight. So the first half of that day, on the 31st, was the inquiry, the preliminary hearing into Westminster and the paedophile rings running within Westminster, that still run in Westminster today. It has to be said. Jesus, nothing's changed. I mean, they've been doing it for the last God knows how many centuries. They're not going to stop now. They're covering it. They're covering it up. Even to this point, while an inquiry is going on that's supposed to be uncovering all this, they're still covering it up, because the BBC yesterday reported that the kind of suggested that the victims had asked for Woollerton Woollerton Care Home and the case of Andris Loggin to be highlighted in this inquiry, which is quite the opposite. They said they didn't want those two cases highlighted. Even one of Andris Loggin's victims says she didn't want Andris Loggin's case to be highlighted, because if that was so, it would narrow the scope of the investigation down so much that you would not get to the core of the problem. And even one of the victims was willing to concede that. So that just goes to show you that, you know, this is still being covered up, because that's not what the BBC reported. The BBC reported the opposite, and took a big turd on the victims again, like they do on everyone else. So don't listen to do listen to the BBC, because it's good to see what the enemy's talking about and see what bullshit they're shoveling. But yeah, take it all with a massive grain of salt, like it should be took. So anyway, rant over about the BBC and the mainstream media, because they're all covering it in the same way, by missing out the most vital details, the whole point of that hearing, and they missed that out and misrepresented it, as per usual. So I'm going to report today on the Westminster hearing, but just little sections of it, because the videos take too long to upload, and there's so much data to get through. So yeah, we'll just keep up. I'll keep posting them. This one today, I wanted to highlight this point in this hearing. It's on page 19 of this transcript. So I'll just get to the page. Here we go. Alright. A central theme in many cases in this category is the suggestion that police may have been prevented from investigating the conduct of senior politicians and other establishment figures. A number of retired police officers have claimed that they were indeed warned off investigating possible cases of child sexual abuse committed by senior politicians in the 1960s and 70s, also 1960s, 70s and 80s. Several of these cases are linked to the Elm Guesthouse affair, which was itself the subject of investigation by the Metropolitan Police, and its Operation Fairbank and Fernbridge. The claims that have been made are claims of conspiracy and cover-up, and we submit that they go to the heart of the inquiry's work in this investigation. I have mentioned the Metropolitan Police's investigation. In addition, some of the cases in this category have been investigated by the IPCC and/or its successor body, the Independent Office for Police Conduct. We are liaising with both the IOPC and the Met Police in this regard. So that just goes into what any person that's half awake already realises, that any good police officer, which there are many, is being stopped in investigating the real root of this crime, which is the elite's need to predicate on our children. And it's always been, and it's still going on now. But now we have the internet, and even more so, we have the blockchain. So evidence that used to go missing can no longer go missing. So these things have swung in our favour. So we're now discovering things like Jimmy Savile, Lord Janner, Cyril. What is it? Oh, Cyril, fucking wanker. Cyril Smith, is it? MP. I mean, there's tons of them, but there's now all coming out slightly. But they're trying to mask it over with this black dress parade and hashtag this and hashtag that. Don't believe the hype. So, like I say, this was going into what we already know about it being covered up, and police officers who want to investigate it are being warned off. So this was disclosed in the hearing on the 31st to the inquiry panel, which, in all fairness, is nothing they shouldn't already. Well, it isn't. It's nothing no one already knows, because look, this is my point. It's nothing new. Pedo MP. This is from the Mirror, a report by Tom Pettifor, and this is back in 2013. Pedo MP. Cover-up claim. Top cop removed from sex abuse probe after naming politicians as suspects. So while all these previous investigations have been going on, and they've been trying to put people in place who've been doing a good job, like this DCI Clive Driscoll, every time they've got somewhere and started getting to the core problem, they've been removed. Tasked with flushing out paedophiles preying on vulnerable youngsters at children's homes, Detective Chief Inspector Clive Driscoll relished the challenge, but the officer suddenly found himself booted off the case and put on a disciplinary hearing after revealing politicians were named among the suspects. At least one of the figures is understood to have been an MP. At least being the operative, we're concentrating on that. And former Labour councillor Anna Tapsell claims she was visited by a police chief to warn her off after she raised concerns that detectives would not properly investigate allegations of paedophile activity in care homes. So even at this point, 2013, people are noticing through history that the allegations of paedophilia aren't being investigated properly. So they're bringing this case up now in 2013 in retrospect. So now we're doing it again in 2018, and we'll probably do it again in 2028. But let's see if we can change that. So I'll carry on with this article. Where was it? Mr. Driscoll launched his probe into child sex abuse claims in the South London borough of Lambeth in 1998. But he claims Scotland Yard began meddling as soon as the politicians were named. Now that is a massive echo to Melanie Shaw. She was being supported. She's a victim of child abuse from the Beechwood care home, and she was being supported in her claims of abuse, right up until the point that she started naming politicians and important members of society, as they call themselves. As soon as she started doing that, she's now banged up. She's been locked up for the last 20 months or 21 months, being shipped all over the UK into different prisons. If you want to find out more about that, go to the UK column, ukcolumn.com, and they cover it really well about Melanie Shaw and how she's been imprisoned and silenced, and that's thanks to the Director of Public Prosecutions, Andrea Saunders, conspiring with Nottinghamshire Police Chief, or former Police Chief, Chris Eyre, which I've wrote about in an article. And I might put that in the notes if I remember to. So yeah, them two scumbags conspired to put Melanie Shaw away because she thought she was a whistleblower. Another whistleblower is Sabine McNeil, who I wrote about, another social worker that's decided to speak out about the foster care industry. Now she's under kind of not house arrest, but she can't leave the country under her bail conditions now, and they've been trying to lock her up under the Mental Health Act, like they usually do. Usual tactics. Yeah, it's just a disgrace. It's been going on, and it's still going on. Nothing's changing, and this whole inquiry is a sham. It really is. Anyway, so this article goes on to say the officer now spearheading the fresh investigation into teenager Stephen Lawrence's murder said, "I was unhappy with the interference of some senior officers who did not appear to have a logical connection to my investigation into child sex abuse in Lambeth. There were allegations made by several people that named politicians had been involved, but I had never had the chance to investigate them because I was moved before I could do so." I really like the voice. This is the lady that was talking about earlier, the councillor campaigning, Anna Tapsell, who was warned off by police. We'll go into her a little bit in a minute. Asked if there was a cover-up of child sexual abuse in Lambeth by Scotland Yard, he said, "You would need an investigation to establish that." And asked if it was true that a file of evidence naming politicians as suspects and others was lost, he replied, "I handed the file to an officer, and I have no knowledge where it went after that." Mr Driscoll was yesterday supported by Miss Tapsell, a chairwoman of Lambeth Social Services Committee, who has highlighted sexual abuse of children in the borough's care for 2 decades. 2 decades she's been fighting for this, yeah, and now we're still doing it. And this is a report from 5 years ago, sorry. Carry on. Miss Tapsell said, "When I learned that Clive was being removed, not only from the case, but also from Lambeth, I realised that the Met were caving in to political pressure that was far more powerful than Lambeth Council. I was aware of allegations about an MP and the Met's failure to act on those allegations, and its apparent desire to silence those who called for them to be investigated fully was deeply shocking to me. Council employees who tried to expose staff they suspected of sexual abuse were sidelined and ignored. At the same time, alleged perpetrators were moved or allowed to leave for financial misconduct or other misdemeanours instead of for the abuse. This meant many children never received the justice they deserved." Very well said, my dear, indeed. This is a former kids' home, now a private residence. This is... Does it say here? Yes, it does. After Mrs Driscoll's removal, Miss Tapsell told how she raised fears about the depth of the investigation into sex abuse claims at Brixton's Angel Road Children's Home in South Vale Youth Assessment Centre in West Norwood during a meeting of the Community Police Consultative Group. Now, if you did read my last article yesterday, right at the bottom of it, I left it on a comment that was made about this inquiry. Should always keep in mind that the abuse may be centred on the Nottingham care homes, but this is going on in care homes all over the UK. Now, what a better example of that than this sentence here. Yeah. This has been going on for donkeys, and this is in London, other end of the country, and it's exactly the same kind of stuff. She alleges a high-ranking officer later arrived at her home. Miss Tapsell added, "I doubt whether I was the only person to be visited by a senior police officer in an attempt to warn me off. I had cast doubt on the Met's inclination to get to the bottom of the paedophile activity within Lambeth's care system. It had outraged a high-ranking officer who had spoken at that meeting. That resulted in an unpleasant visit to my home by another senior officer. I have found the minutes of that meeting in the archives of Lambeth CPCG, but no mention is made of the high-ranking officer's contribution, and the tape recording is also missing." Oh, surprise, surprise. There you go, hey? There's democracy. Here's the great British nation in action, hey? Aren't we such a dignified bunch, hey? Stiff upper lip, cup of tea and all that. Fucking wankers, I tell you. Well, the hierarchy of this country are. The bread and butter of this country are fine people. The finest people. Just like any other human being in the world. It's just like we've got a problem. We've got the same problem that everyone's got. Yeah, with you, you always go back to this, with you black, Hispanic, Chinese, English, French, whatever. It doesn't matter what colour or nation or age, creed, sex you are. We've all got the same problem. It's rich people. It's rich elite people that have been ruling these lands for forevermore, and we all need to realise that it's them that's causing the problem. So stop separating yourselves into groups of blacks and Asians and Muslims and all the rest of it. And the World Cup, what is it? The World Cup will be coming round soon, so you can all start waving your separate flags and separate yourselves. And I'm British, and that means something, does it? Okay, human as well. I'm also human. Yeah. Let's just celebrate. Let's have an Olympics that celebrates just a human's ability to do it for sporting achievements, and have us all representing the human race. How about that for an Olympics? Rather than all representing separate nations with fucking it's disgusting. It's disgusting what it really means. Anyway, I will carry on. So she's found the minutes and all that's missing. Labour MP John Mann, a former Lambeth councillor, said last night, "Aye, it's essential that an outside force conducts a full investigation into these claims." Mr Driscoll, who has had a distinguished career in the Met for 3 decades, told how disciplinary proceedings, known as a Regulation 15 notice or a 163 form, were started against him after he named the politicians in a confidential meeting with council officials in the late 1990s. And this is Mr. Angry Labour MP John Mann, who looks very pissed off. He said the action followed a complaint by an executive on the council. The officer was also moved from Lambeth. Well, we know that from the lady's testimony earlier. Reports earlier. The detective was investigated and questioned under caution by other officers. So the force turned on him, basically. Mr Driscoll added, "I was handed a 163 form. It was revoked after they moved me, and all disciplinary action was dropped." So they just got him out of the way, basically. The Met set up a 5-year investigation into sexual abuse linked to Lambeth social care called Operation Middleton. It was a joint probe with the council and was based in the town hall. Ooh, that sounds real. Based in the town hall, guys. Man, eh? Ring the bells, code red. Leading to criticism that the Met were working too closely with the organisation that had employed abusers. Yes, they were drinking tea and scoffing scones with them at the town hall with the vicar. While they were buggering fucking choir boys in the confessional. Jesus Christ, man. You sick gits. Officers traced 200 victims between 1998 and 2003, and the probe secured 3 convictions. Woo! 3 convictions! 3 convictions at the cost of millions, a few clotted scones, and a box full of tea bags. Right? And a load of fat, useless coppers. Sorry, I'm just sorting out a charge wire on my laptop. Right? What a result. For all that, we get 3 convictions. Pathetic. Disgraceful. I ain't a word for it. A total of 19 suspects were never identified, fueling fears a paedophile ring had operated, involving men from outside of the care system, i.e. the coppers, all the bent coppers, all the bent politicians, and all the rest of these elite scumbags that are fueling this paedophile epidemic that we've got that's been uncovered. It's not even an epidemic. It's just something that it's a cancer that's infested our species. And it's been there for evermore, and it's time to get rid. Yeah, this article goes on to just expose more cover-ups, and all you read the rest yourself. And that was 2013. Then 2014, the year after. Has anything changed? Has it? Fuck. I was warned off asking Britain what he knew about paedophile dossier, says Labour MP Simon Danksuk. So let's find out this. Find out what this story is all about. On the left you have Danksuk, and on the right you have MP Britain. A campaigning Labour MP claimed on Sunday that he was warned off challenging Lord Britton, the former Home Secretary, about what he knew about an alleged Westminster paedophile ring. Simon Danksuk said a Conservative minister told him not to name Lord Britton in a parliamentary committee last week, suggesting that if he did, he could be responsible for the Conservative peer's death. Mr. Danksuk ignored the warning and revealed that Lord Britton had seen a bundle of papers detailing an alleged Westminster paedophile ring. Lord Britton has since said he passed the 40-page dossier of papers on to Home Office officials to investigate. Yeah, I bet he did, after he wiped his arse with them. So this carries on to say, Mr. Danksuk said the warning came after a vote in the House of Commons on Monday night, when a senior Conservative MP stepped out of the shadows to confront him. He said, "I'd never spoke to him before in my life, but he blocked my way and ushered me to one side. He said, 'Hey, I hear you're about to challenge Lord Britton about what he knew about child sex abuse. It wouldn't be a wise move. It was all put to bed a long time ago. He warned me I could even be responsible for his death.' We looked at each other in silence for a moment. I knew straight away he wasn't telling me this out of concern for the man's welfare. There was no compassion in his voice." Mr. Danksuk also raised concerns that MPs on the Select Committee avoided questioning him about what he knew about a VIP child abuse ring alleged to have operated with impunity in the 1980s and the 90s and the 2000s and 2010 and still up to today. It's still going on. Stop bullshitting. The Rochdale MP who helped expose the sexual abuse carried out by the former Liberal Democrat MP Cyril Fat Bastard Smith said he had been prepared to name one individual as he was happy he had the threshold of evidence that would justify it. We've got the threshold of evidence for everything, but no one's listening. That's the problem. Everyone's got a threshold of evidence. But he added that a member of the committee told him there had been an agreement he would not be asked questions that would allow him to name anyone using parliamentary privilege, which would shield him from being sued. Parliamentary privilege is a privilege that they've got to name people without, like it says, without being sued. That's kind of. This didn't dawn on me till a few comments later what that phrase kind of meant, parliamentary privilege. But that is who was the guy? Mr. Danksuk raised concerns that MPs on Select Committee. This is I can't remember, the Rochdale MP who helped expose. Yeah, this is it. So this is the Rochdale MP who's adding this, who's using his parliamentary privilege to name and shame paedophiles. And it says here, which would shield him from being sued. One member said to me, "We have agreed not to ask any questions that might identify parliamentarians," or something to that effect, he told the BBC. Another said to me, "Listen, there has been some agreement that we shouldn't ask you questions that enable you to use your privilege." And then it says, in response, Keith Vaz, chairman of Home Affairs Select Committee, said all witnesses who give evidence to the committee are free to say what they want. Yeah, blah 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 blah. Bullshit. You're a politician. Yeah. I'm not even going to finish his sentence off. He don't deserve it. The affair has echoes of previous attempts to name suspected abusers made by the former Tory MP Geoffrey Dickens in the 1980s. There you go, another instance of historical kind of whistle blowing on this that's just gone unheeded again. In March 1981, he used the legal protection of parliamentary privilege to name Sir Peter Hayman, a former diplomat who had been arrested and cautioned for having paedophilic material in a rented flat. Prior to Dickens naming Hayman, there had also been strenuous attempts by leading figures in Westminster and Whitehall to prevent him from doing so. The then Attorney General, Sir Michael Havers, is understood to have argued with him outside the Commons chamber for 20 minutes before the disclosure of Hayman's name in written questions. My word. So who is that then? That is the prior to Dickens' strenuous attempts. What was this? The Attorney General. Out of the Attorney General, Sir, another Knight of the Realm, Michael Havers, is telling this guy not to disclose this paedophile's name. He's defending paedophiles. The Attorney General, repeat his name, the Attorney General, Sir Michael Havers. Yeah, another paedophile supporter. And that's not just me saying it, that's obviously documented in this. So, no problems in saying that. Yes, this is just another instance of more that it's going on. So these, so I wanted to highlight these two cases just to emphasise this passage here in this hearing. There is another very telling passage here that I want to bring to your attention. Where is this? If I can find it, I'll do it in a second video anyway. But oh yeah, it's just underneath. Here we go. I'll read it out. Another case that raises questions as to inappropriate political influence over police conduct arises from the well-publicised account that the journalist Don Hale has gave of his office being raided by special branch officers who served, or at least purported to serve, a D notice on him and seized a dossier from him containing names of MPs said to be sympathetic to the Paedophile Information Exchange. That's PI, more commonly known as. That if you want to look up on Google, they've got a shockingly terrible history, and we've got our politicians have got a shocking history of supporting them. Oh, and one of them is still in power today. Well, I won't guess at the name because I don't want to incriminate anyone that it doesn't deserve it. But there's an MP today that was a barrister for PI in the Times back in the day when they were prominent, and now she's an MP today. A paedophile supporter who's an MP today, in power, making decisions. Says it all. Where said to be sympathetic to the Paedophile Information Exchange, a dossier that had apparently been given to Mr. Hale by Barbara Castle MP. This case has also been the subject of an investigation by the IICSA. We will consider the report and any other documents relating to these events that we obtain. So yeah, this has already been investigated, blah 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 blah. The people that are in question in this particular case are the people that are, well, obviously it's the secret services, the security forces, which, if we go back up here to this passage here, this goes on about, we have been working on the first stage of this process, i.e. making disclosure requests and obtaining relevant documents from individuals and organisations, for many months now, and it is well underway. We have engaged with a number of organisations that hold potentially relevant material, and we have received over 35,000 pages. To be more specific, we have made disclosure requests from MI6, MI5 and the GCHQ. So the people in question in one of the cases here that are in the firing line are also being asked kindly with sugar on top. Please, could you supply your evidence, please, to us? Yeah, could you incriminate yourselves, please? Yeah, with sugar on top for these poor victims, please, because we all want justice. Honestly, bullshit, eh? And it's sick. It's sickening. This trial is. It really is. It's just my word. There's no word for it, but we may as well cover it, and we may as well. At least we're getting some form of evidence here. And like I say, I'll go in more to this journalist Don Hale, his story. It seems quite interesting, and I'm sure in this inquiry it will go into more into Cyril Smith. It mentions Cyril Smith was already looked into in a previous preliminary hearing, which I want to go into and start looking into. This is obviously, look, you can see the names popping up. It's the usuals: MP, BBC, whips, officers. Geez, it's full of red flags. So I'm going to have a good proper read for this today, and then pick out some more stuff to do some videos on. Like I said, we've got to 30 minutes in this video, and I'm supposed to be keeping these short. Like, there's so much material to get through, so anyone that wants to help, join in. You've got the links there. See you later, gang. Adios. Steam it. Article 61, Team Solutions, at Family Protection, signing out.